Hello friends. You might be watching this because you, like me, felt that Pokemon Sword and Shield wasn't the greatest experience that you could have had in a Pokemon game. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not completely hating on the game. It was a very good 3DS game. Very good indeed. But I feel that the people over at Game Freak and at the Pokemon Company are getting really shy about stepping outside of the mechanics that they've spent the past 20 whatever years refining. Over the past 3 years we've seen Nintendo drop old habits and shake off the shame of the Wii U and the copy-paste gameplay mechanics of Zelda or Mario to some extent. Game Freak and Pokemon on the other hand has never really had a bad release. Criticisms aside, because there has been criticism.
No, they didn't even try.
This paper game looks like shit, dude.
They've still walked away with your money, so they've never been put into a corner where they needed to find a new way out. As a result, we got Sword and Shield, and the soon-to-be coming DLC, which is a topic for another video, maybe. I don't normally make videos like this. This video today isn't going to bang on about Sword and Shield and what could have been, or speculate on whether or not there's going to be like a Let's Go Johto. No, this video is kind of my open letter to Game Freak and the Pokemon Company, and anyone else who will listen, about where I think the Pokemon franchise should look next. And before we dive into this any further, I just want to say, I know this is a hotly contested topic, but the fighting mechanics, I think they should remain wholly unchanged, aside from a few small tweaks and maybe new moves and abilities and the sort of thing that you get with a new generation. Maybe a new max out feature similar to Mega Evolution, Z moves or Dynamaxing, or, you know, just why not just chuck all three of them together and let players mix and match and decide which is best. I'll also be staying mostly off the topic of new Pokemon and what Pokemon should or shouldn't be available in the national decks. But I will state that I think that all of them should be available or at least able to be transferred into the game by the end of the game, for crying out loud. You know, Dixit was a bad idea, and it's clearly a marketing tool for the DLC. But no, that's all I'm going to speculate on now. I'm going to move on with the video. The main 3 points I'm going to be talking about is the setting, the gameplay, and the story. So let's focus on the setting, shall we? The setting of a Pokemon game has always been one of the most important pieces of the game. The developers have gone on record to state that they start with the habitat and then try and backfill it by imagining what types of Pokemon live there. In short, the environment informs them on the Pokemon design, and I love that concept. I agree with that too. So what setting would I pick if I was designing a Pokemon game? What would I implore Game Freak and the Pokemon Company to use as a template for their next region? It's going to be very patriotic of me to say this, but New Zealand!
New Zealand, where the bloody hell are you?
Yes, we've had renditions of America, France, England and Japan 3 bloody times, but New Zealand has something new to offer. Now if you're from outside of New Zealand, which apparently a lot of my audience are, you may know of New Zealand as a nice, calm land of rolling fields, or of open grasslands marked by ancient glaciers, or snowy mountain tops and rivers. But we have a lot more than just that to offer. We have a very small desert. Many beautiful and scenic harbours and bays filled with islands and hundreds of beaches. One of them is 90 miles long. Well, not quite. It's called that though. We have the biggest lake in the southern hemisphere. Native rainforests, volcanoes and geothermal wonderlands. Cities and small towns alike. And that's just in the North Island. The South Island has fjords and more rainforests. Rivers and valleys that once caught the attraction of gold prospectors way back in the old days. Rolling grasslands, lots of more beautiful mountains and snow, and bungee jumping as well. Yes, when you look at New Zealand as a complete package, there are many unique habitats and environments that would make for a great Pokemon game. Which moves me to my next point. The gameplay. The gameplay needs not so much of a facelift, rather than more total reconstructive surgery. I think we can all agree on that. The constriction of walking around on routes between towns, that's just so 1990s. The wild area was a great start, but let's get a bit more serious than that. Let's let our next game be more seamless. It doesn't need to be as well mapped out as Breath of the Wild or Red Dead Redemption, but at least let the exploration of the wild with your Pokemon feel a bit more exciting than strolling around on a golf course. With that being said, the gameplay should be spaced out across 2 games. As much as I hate the shakedown of having to buy 2 games to get all the Pokemon or endure social interaction, I think that it is a great feature. It brings people together, and I love that. So 2 games is a must, but you know what else there is 2 of? Islands in New Zealand. There is a North and a South. Do those sound like good game titles to you? Pokemon North and Pokemon South? But let's not just leave it as a naming convention, let's take it that extra step. In Pokemon North, you start the game in the Winterless North. You pick up your starter and begin your journey through the 8 gyms towards the Pokemon League, which let's say is located in the capital, Wellington, or whatever they want to call it, at the bottom of the North Island. You fight your way down there, encountering new companions, making friends, defeating rivals, and finally you beat the Pokemon League. Yay for you! Pause! Rewind! Let's say you got Pokemon South. When you put that cartridge in, you start the game in the South Island. Setting out on the frosty ground, you begin your journey north, defeating the 8 unique gym leaders in the south, and crossing the strait on a ferry to battle the Pokemon League. Once the league is beaten, in either game, the opposite island opens to you and you get the chance to re-enter the league by gaining a new set of 8 badges that you didn't previously encounter. Each game would in turn present a much different storyline, and giving the gym leaders in the respective game versions starting island a 2-tier level so that you can rematch the original 8 if you so wish, or just roll on to the more challenging new island that you've yet to go to, would just add a new element to the game, making it more exciting and replayable. I think this would be a much better improvement than just having 2 unique gym leaders between the 2 versions like what we have in Sword and Shield. It would be a similar element to the Gold and Silver with the after-game storyline, and would mean a varied approach for the 2 different versions in terms of starter choice and strategy, as well as the types of Pokemon that would become available, marking a stark difference between the 2 versions without relying on version exclusives alone. I know I spoke about battle mechanics at the beginning of this game, and I know a lot of people would like to see some more exciting types of battle mechanics where maybe you control a Pokemon like in Pokken Tournament or Smash Bros. And I don't think that there isn't merit in that idea, but perhaps as more of a side quest type thing. Like what you got with Pokemon competitions in, was it Pearl and Diamond? Something that you can maybe control your Pokemon with and have that fighting style within a Pokemon game as a bit of a side quest to the main game. That way you're entertaining 2 different types of audiences. Those who are locked down to the core mechanics and love coming back to play with the mechanics that they used to, and then those that want to see something a little bit more exciting and action-packed like what you get in the anime. What did I say was the last one? Story? Yeah, story. I guess we need to talk about the story, don't we? The story of each Pokemon game always gets a little bit, let's say a little bit over the top. The first generation and second generation of Pokemon games was a lot more grounded. There was the main storyline that you were a trainer that was trying to beat the Pokemon League, and I feel like that element has taken a backseat to the more grandiose adventure of going out and exploring the world, meeting a legendary Pokemon and becoming like the chosen one, and then having to go on this huge epic quest that goes above and beyond. I mean, in Sword and Shield, for example, the main Pokemon League match was interrupted for fighting a legendary Pokemon that isn't even on the cover art, that I didn't even care for. I'm getting emotional now. I'd like to see, whatever the story is, put more power back into the exploration idea, like what we got with Breath of the Wild. Let it be a role-playing game, and not a game where there is a definite storyline that you need to follow, like what we've been getting with the last couple of versions of Pokemon games. Don't get me wrong, having those elements in there can make it feel nice and engaging, but it takes power away from the audience, the player. They don't really get to experience the game they want to. You're forced to go here and talk to this guy and look for that guy and do this, and it really doesn't fall in line with what a Pokemon game should feel like, in my humble opinion. I know that leaves this category quite open, but just in my opinion, I think that the storyline should be left quite open for players to pick up missions or quests or what have you, and experience different parts of the story element if they so wish to. If they wanted to go hunt a legendary, then maybe there's like the Deoxys quest at the end of Alpha Sapphire and Omega Ruby. That was a cool storyline and I liked that. It didn't take too much away from what you were achieving in the game, and it was a nice little way to end it off. More of that, please, would be great. To the point of having a storyline involved with the local culture, I feel like that's a bit of a hit and a miss. When Unova first was chosen as a region which was outside of Japan, it took people a while to cotton on to the fact that it was the US. It started off as a bit of a game theory, and people looked at the map and noticed that it kind of looked like Manhattan, but just a little bit more wild. And it wasn't until later on that it was confirmed as being inspired by the United States. Whereas if you jump to the Gala region, they've quite clearly tried to make a reference to the fact that this is Pokemon's version of the UK. It gets a little bit insensitive, I think, when you make it out that the only food available is curry, and everybody says mate to everybody. And I felt myself that was a bit cringy and forced. I'd like to see them take a step back and let the world inside the game be its own world. Maybe subtle nods, certain cities being laid out a certain way or in certain locations, having characters that could be interpreted away without rubbing it in your face. Subtlety is the key here. That's what I'd like to see some of. Anyway, this is just one guy rambling into a microphone about what he thinks the next generation of Pokemon should look like, even though, there might not even be another generation of Pokemon. Now that we have Sword and Shield, we might see new games coming out, but they might not actually release another generation of Pokemon, because it's getting quite chocker, to be honest. I don't think we need to see any more. We've got lots of sheep in New Zealand, so maybe just some Mareep and some Woolies, with a region exclusive, some Miltanks, that would do us. If it ever comes about, I'd be very happy to play it. I think it would be a great idea. And if you think so as well, let me know down in the comments below. Otherwise, this has been Unoriginic. Thank you for listening to my rambling video. And, yeah, that's it. That's the end of the video. I burped really good before in the middle of it. I'll put it right at the end for you. Just if you're still listening, you can listen to that. Here it comes. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Oh, pardon me.